Ever imagine a world where, like, connecting to Wi-Fi at work or the hospital or even your favorite coffee shop was controlled by just a couple of companies?
It's true.
It sounds a bit like a digital dystopia, right?
Yeah, it kind of does.
Well, that scenario almost became our reality, thanks to a huge attempted merger between two tech giants, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, HPE, and Juniper Networks.
Yeah, this proposed merger, it really flew under the radar for a lot of people, but it really had the potential to dramatically reshape the wireless networking landscape.
For sure.
You see, these companies are already major players, the second and third largest in the market for wireless local area networks, or WLANs, which are, essential for businesses, institutions, pretty much anywhere you expect seamless connectivity these days.
Okay, let's unpack double lands for a second.
Sure.
I get that they're important, but why should the average person really care about this merger?
Think about it this way. Every time you connect to Wi-Fi at work, school, a hotel, you're relying on a double LAN. These networks are the kind of invisible backbone of modern life. Now imagine if only two companies controlled most of that infrastructure. Could mean higher prices for internet access, slower speeds, less innovation in the technology itself.
So it's not just about geeky tech stuff. It actually affects our wallets and how we experience the internet every day.
Exactly. And that's where the Department of Justice, or DOJ, stepped in.
Right.
They filed a lawsuit to block this merger, arguing that it would stifle competition and ultimately hurt consumers. What's fascinating here is this lawsuit was the first major antitrust action under the new Trump administration.
Yeah, I remember that. Everyone was expecting Trump to be kind of more hands-off with businesses, but this move really shook things up. It's like, hold on, antitrust laws still matter.
Absolutely. Antitrust laws are designed to prevent monopolies, which is when a single company controls so much of a market that it can dictate prices and stifle innovation.
Right.
The DOJ argued that if HPE and Juniper merged, we'd be one step closer to that scenario, especially since Cisco already dominates the WLAN market.
So basically, the DOJ was saying we need to keep these companies on their toes, competing with each other to offer us better and more affordable Wi-Fi.
That's a great way to put it. And to understand why they were so concerned, we need to look at Juniper's impact on the market.
Okay.
They were this rising star, growing fast, and really pushing HPE to innovate and offer competitive prices. In fact, the DOJ's complaint revealed some pretty intense tactics HPE was using to try and kill Juniper, their words, not mine.
Wait, kill Juniper? That sounds a bit traumatic even for the, cutthroat world of tech.
Yeah.
What were they actually doing?
Well, the DOJ uncovered internal documents where HPE salespeople were instructed to, aggressively target Juniper's clients, offering deep discounts, basically doing whatever it took to win back market share. There was even a former executive encouraging street fight tactics. It's clear they felt threatened by Juniper's success.
So Juniper was this scrappy underdog shaking things up and forcing HPE to step up their game. No wonder the DOJ saw them as like a vital force in the market.
Exactly. And that fierce competition ultimately benefits us, the consumers. But here's where things get even more interesting. Despite the DOJ's arguments, this merger had already been approved in the UK and the European Union.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild. So different countries have different ideas about what constitutes healthy competition.
Yeah.
Why would the UK and EU give this merger the green light while the US slammed on the brakes?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of the complex world of global antitrust regulations. There are a lot of factors at play here, different economic priorities, different assessments of the market, and even political considerations. We'll dive into those nuances a bit later on, but it's important to recognize that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to antitrust.
Okay, so we've got this high-stakes merger, a government agency trying to block it, international intrigue. It sounds like a legal thriller. But what about HPE and Juniper? Surely they didn't just roll over and accept the DOJ's decision, right?
Right. You're right. They came out swinging with a pretty compelling defense, arguing that blocking the merger would actually harm competition, not help it.
Okay.
Their logic, they needed to join forces to take on the real, 800-pound gorilla in the room, Cisco.
So instead of eliminating a competitor, they were trying to create a stronger rival to an even bigger competitor. It's like a David and Goliath story with a tech twist.
Precisely. And to make their case even more appealing, they played the America First card, framing the merger as a way to bolster U.S. dominance in the global tech landscape. They argued that a combined HPE Juniper would be a true national champion, better equipped to compete against foreign companies and protect U.S. interests.
So they were appealing to national pride and economic anxieties. weaving in the idea that this merger wasn't just good for business, it was good for America. Pretty savvy, I have to admit.
It was a clever strategy, tapping into those us versus them sentiments that often influence political and economic decisions.
For sure.
But it raises an important question. Is that a genuine argument or just a clever tactic?
Right.
And even if their intentions were good, does the potential benefit of a stronger U.S. competitor outweigh the risk of reduced competition and higher prices for consumers in the short term?
These are some tough questions. And it gets to the core of what antitrust laws are all about. Balancing the interests of businesses with the needs of consumers.
Exactly. And this case serves as a microcosm of that larger struggle.
Right.
It forces us to ask, what's the right balance? How much power should we allow any single company to have? And how do we ensure that innovation continues to flourish while protecting consumers from potential monopolies?
These aren't easy questions to answer, but they're questions we need to be asking, especially as technology becomes increasingly intertwined with our lives.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up the America First angle.
Yeah.
Because it seems like that argument didn't hold much sway with the DOJ.
Right.
I mean, they weren't convinced that this merger was in the best interest of American consumers, even if it created a stronger competitor on the global stage.
Yeah, that's right. The DOJ was laser-focused on the potential harm to competition within the U.S. market. They argued that allowing HPE and Juniper to merge would essentially eliminate a major competitor,
Right.
leaving Cisco with even more power to dominate the WLAN market.
So even though HPE and Juniper were trying to frame this merger as a way to challenge Cisco, the DOJ saw it as actually strengthening Cisco's position in the long run.
Precisely. The DOJ's argument was that a combined HPE Juniper would still be significantly smaller than Cisco, and therefore less likely to effectively challenge its dominance.
Oh.
Plus, they were concerned that the merger would eliminate the competitive pressure that was driving both HPE and Juniper to innovate and offer lower prices.
It makes sense. If you take away a major competitor, the remaining companies have less incentive to push themselves. It's like running a race where you're suddenly miles ahead of everyone else.
Right.
You might be tempted to slow down and coast to the finish line.
Exactly, and that's what the DOJ was worried about. They didn't want to see the WLAN market become a leisurely stroll for Cisco.
Right.
They wanted to see a fierce race with multiple companies pushing each other to the limit, ultimately benefiting consumers with better products and lower prices.
So the DOJ's concern wasn't just about the size of the companies involved, but also about the dynamics of competition within the market.
Yeah.
They were worried that this merger would essentially kill off the competitive spirit that was driving innovation and lower prices.
You hit the nail on the head. The DOJ's complaint highlighted specific instances where Juniper's presence in the market forced HPE to lower their prices and invest heavily in research and development. They argued that this kind of competitive pressure was essential to keeping the WLAN market dynamic and beneficial for consumers.
So the DOJ was essentially saying, look, we have evidence that Juniper is making HPE work harder to win customers.
Right.
If you eliminate Juniper, that pressure goes away and everyone loses.
Exactly. And remember those aggressive tactics we discussed earlier? The DOJ used those as evidence that HPE was feeling the heat from Juniper's competition.
Right.
They argued that these tactics were a direct response to Juniper's success in gaining market share.
So HPE's attempts to kill Juniper actually backfired.
Yeah.
Giving the DOJ even more ammunition to block the merger.
Yeah.
It's like they inadvertently proved the DOJ's point.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it? Their own aggressive behavior ended up highlighting the importance of having a strong competitor in the market.
Speaking of competition, we mentioned earlier that the UK and the European Union had already approved this merger. What were their arguments and how did they differ from the DOJ's perspective?
That's a great question, and it highlights the complexities of antitrust enforcement on a global scale. The UK and EU regulators acknowledged the potential for reduced competition in the US market.
Right.
However, they placed more emphasis on the potential benefits of creating a stronger global competitor to Cisco.
So they were looking at the bigger picture, focusing on the global tech landscape rather than just the U.S. market.
Exactly. They argued that a combined HPE Juniper would be better positioned to compete against rising tech giants in China and other parts of the world.
Okay.
They also believed that the merger would lead to greater economies of scale,
Right.
allowing the combined company to invest more heavily in research and development, ultimately benefiting consumers with more advanced, affordable WLAN solutions.
So it was a difference in priorities and perspectives.
Yeah.
The U.S. regulators were primarily concerned with protecting American consumers from potential price hikes and reduced innovation.
Right.
While the UK and EU regulators were more focused on bolstering a global competitor to challenge the rising dominance of foreign tech companies.
That's a great summary. It's a classic example of how different regulatory bodies can have varying interpretations of antitrust laws and how those interpretations can lead to divergent outcomes.
It's fascinating how a single merger attempt can spark such a complex web of legal battles and contrasting viewpoints. It really underscores the challenges of regulating a globalized economy, where companies operate across borders and national interests often clash.
Absolutely. And this case raises important questions about the future of antitrust enforcement.
Hmm.
In an increasingly interconnected world, how do we balance the need to protect competition in specific markets with the desire to foster global competitiveness?
It's a tough balancing act, and there's no easy answer. But I think it's crucial to have these conversations and to carefully consider the long-term implications of these decisions. After all, the choices made by regulators today will shape the technological landscape of tomorrow.
Well said. And as we move forward, it's essential to keep in mind that antitrust enforcement is not just about preventing monopolies, it's also about promoting innovation, protecting consumers, and ensuring that markets remain dynamic and competitive.
It's mind-boggling to think that something as seemingly simple as connecting to Wi-Fi can be so deeply intertwined with global politics and economics.
It really highlights how technology is no longer confined to, Silicon Valley boardrooms. It's a force shaping international relations and economic strategies.
So in the end, what happened with the HPE-Juniper merger? Did the DOJ actually manage to block it?
They did. The DOJ's lawsuit was successful, and the merger was ultimately abandoned. It's a landmark case, really. It demonstrates that even under an administration often seen as, business-friendly, antitrust enforcement is still a top priority.
It sounds like the DOJ sent a strong message that they're not afraid to challenge powerful corporations, even when those corporations try to wrap themselves in the flag of national interest.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that antitrust laws are there to protect competition, innovation, and ultimately the consumer. It's about ensuring that markets remain dynamic and benefit everyone, not just a handful of powerful companies.
This whole case has really got me thinking about all the other mergers and acquisitions happening under the radar, especially in the technology industry. It feels like every day another company is getting swallowed up by a bigger fish.
You're right. There's a constant stream of mergers and acquisitions that don't necessarily make headline news, but they can still have a significant impact on competition and innovation. It's like a slow, steady march toward consolidation.
And if we're not careful, we could end up in a world where a few tech giants control vast swaths of the digital landscape, dictating the terms of our online experiences.
That's why it's crucial for regulators to remain vigilant, carefully scrutinizing these deals, even the ones that might seem insignificant at first glance. Because even a small merger can have ripple effects, tipping the scales in favor of one company and potentially harming competition in the long run.
So what can we do as consumers? Are we just pawns in this game of corporate chess at the mercy of these tech giants and the regulators who are supposed to keep them in check?
Not at all. The first step is to stay informed. Pay attention to the news, read about these issues, and understand how they affect your daily life. Knowledge is power. And the more you understand about the forces shaping the tech landscape, the better equipped you'll be to make informed choices.
So we need to be aware of what's happening and understand how these decisions impact us. But what can we actually do to influence the outcome?
Once you're informed, you can make your voice heard. Contact your elected officials, express your concerns about anti-competitive practices, and support organizations that champion consumer rights.
So we can leverage our power as citizens to influence policy and hold our leaders accountable for promoting fair competition.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of your wallet. Support companies that prioritize ethical practices, innovation, and consumer-friendly policies. By choosing where we spend our money, we can send a strong message to the market about the kind of future we want to see.
It's empowering to know that we're not powerless in this. We can make a difference through our choices and by advocating for policies that promote a more competitive and innovative tech landscape.
Absolutely. The future of technology is not predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make today, both as individuals and as a society.
This deep dive into the HPE-Juniper merger attempt has been eye-opening. It's exposed the complex interplay between corporate strategy, government regulation, and consumer interests. It's a reminder that the decisions made in boardrooms and courtrooms have a ripple effect, shaping the technology we use, the prices we pay, and the choices available to us.
And it underscores the importance of staying informed, engaged, and willing to speak up for the kind of digital future we want to create.
So the next time you connect to Wi-Fi, remember the forces at play behind that seemingly simple action: competition, innovation, and government regulation are constantly shaping the technologies we rely on. This deep dive is just the beginning. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a tech landscape that benefits everyone.